I am Ellen Stellian, the Midlife Empowerment Coach, and today I am thrilled to introduce Doreen Landolfi. Doreen is a holistic midlife transformation coach for women. She specializes in supporting midlife women who struggle with a number of issues. She works with women in their 40s and 50s, supporting them to bust through their midlife funk. I like that. And fall in love with life again. Yeah, we can always use that help. One of her goals is to encourage women to not be afraid to speak out about the challenges and struggles they may be dealing with as a result of being middle-aged. So Doreen, welcome. I'm so looking forward to our conversation. You and I have chatted a bit, and I know we are so in sync.
Yes.
So I know that the topic for today was midlife. It's not a crisis, it's an awakening. And a lot of people do think it's a crisis. So how did you come to that realization in your life that midlife doesn't have to be about a crisis and can be an awakening?
Yeah, so it's funny when you say I like the bust out of that funk, right? Because I was in a funk for a really long time. And no matter what I did, I just couldn't shake it. And I kept trying to figure out what's going on, what's wrong. And, of course, the whole midlife crisis thing came up. And I started thinking to myself, but why does it have to be a crisis? It sounds so negative, right? But it wasn't until after I went through the whole process, because I believe it's a process, that's when I realized, you know what, this is really an opportunity to wake up. And what I think happens, what woke me up is the crisis really, or major life-changing event, is something in your life that happens at this time. So for me, it was empty nest. But for somebody else, it could be marital issues, financial changes, career changes, just aging in general. That's like a big one for us women, especially to kind of wrap our head around. You look in the mirror and you're like, I'm watching myself age. It's just overwhelming.
And what about menopause? That's happening around this time.
Right. So you have all this stuff happening, and sometimes, you have more than one thing happening, and it just can become very overwhelming. And from what I've come to realize, there's really not a lot of support out there. There's a very positive spin on midlife, which I think is great, but because not every woman gets stuck at midlife, but for those women like me who do, I just didn't find the support that I needed. I had support from family and friends, but it wasn't what I was looking for, because I needed to connect with women who were experiencing what I was experiencing. So for me, what happened was my oldest son left for college, and I was just completely blindsided. I had no idea that I was going to feel the way that I felt after he left. And it was confusing because I couldn't understand why I was feeling this way, because nobody else around me seemed to be feeling this way. I got very depressed. I was sad all the time. I had this feeling like there was just this emptiness, this void, like I had no purpose. And I said this many times, and it sounds kind of morbid, but I felt like somebody died. It felt like I was grieving.
Wow. Yeah.
And I know that sounds dramatic, but that's the only way that I could experience it, because the level of sadness was just so overwhelming to me. And I was like, what is going on? What is wrong with me? I couldn't find anybody out there who was relating to me. I couldn't find any information. And at the time, I didn't belong on social media. So I didn't realize that there were groups, say, on Facebook that were very supportive.
So if you were talking to your girlfriends at the time, were you being kind of open about this? And they were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Do you feel like women were not going through it, or were just not open about it?
Well, I spoke mostly to my very close friends and my sister. So I know that if they were experiencing something, they would share it with me.
Right.
And they did have their own, phase where they went through some empty nest, but it just wasn't the same as what I was going through, and this can be a little sensitive topic, but I was a stay-at-home mom. So I wonder if it affected me differently because I wasn't working outside of the home. You know what I mean? Well, not to say that women who work don't experience empty nest.
Totally.
I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm just wondering if it was a different experience.
And I actually think there's something there, because I feel like your identity is much more wrapped up in being a mom, versus I think a woman who is out in the working world has multiple identities, not that you only have one identity if you're a mom, but it's really your primary role.
Right.
As opposed to, right, if you're out in the working world, you have a role you're playing out there in addition to the role at home. So maybe you're not as wed to the,
Right.
and as you know, connected and
Right.
dependent on the mother role, right?
Right. I mean, I even thought during that time, I thought to myself, maybe if I was working, this void and lack of purpose wouldn't really be as strong because I'd still have something to fill the void and I would still have something to focus on outside of my children. And I didn't have that. So I was wondering, maybe there's something there, like you said, because I was a stay-at-home mom, and yes, that was my identity. And so yeah, I was just having a really tough time with it. And and then, all of a sudden I started to have anxiety because I kept thinking there's something, I'm going crazy, or there's something wrong with me. And I did end up going to therapy because I needed some extra support. And what I learned, which I thought was so interesting, was I was grieving the loss. I was grieving a loss, but it wasn't just the loss of my children leaving the nest. It was the loss of the woman I'd been for the past almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
I was grieving her, the end of her, because she served her purpose. She did her job. And there really isn't any place for her. In the first half of my adult life, that was her role. But I can't bring her over to this side because there's no reason for her to be here. There's no purpose for her. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, even though you'll always be a mom, it's
Right.
very different
Yes.
type of role that you're playing,
Exactly.
right? I mean, and and it doesn't, the other thing that brings up for me is it doesn't, it feels like a, I don't know, like a problem you're not supposed to have, because what's the alternative? That your kids didn't launch, that they're struggling, they're at home, they can't be on their own for whatever reason. And so then it's like, you don't want to talk about it because then it feels like, I mean, this is what's supposed to be happening.
Right.
And for some reason, like it's, it's not okay. Like what, boo-hoo, I'm complaining because my kids are successfully launched.
Right.
And that really takes away from your message, which is, like, it's really important to look at this and to recognize what's going on.
Right. Because I mean, and again, it's just like anything else. Some women don't feel it as strongly as other women. And that was basically what I was getting in return whenever I would share it with somebody. It would be, oh, well, this is just what happens. This is part of life. This is a good thing. And yes, I did see all of those things. And I knew that it was happening. I knew it was coming. I just never thought it was going to hit me the way it hit me,
So Val, I'm just going to interrupt to let you know that Val is here, Val Selby, and she says so much of the same experience is what she went through. So
good, I'm glad.
Not alone.
And that validates my, my thought, which the whole time I kept thinking, there's no way I'm the only woman who's experiencing this. There's just no way, but I just wasn't finding it in my immediate circle. So yes, so through therapy, I realized that I was grieving the loss of the woman that I once had been. And so what started to happen after that was, this is the interesting part, because this is also something I wasn't expecting, is I started realizing that just like almost all of us, I had unresolved issues, unhealed wounds from my past, from my childhood, things that we thought, oh, no big deal, it didn't affect me. And I think what happens is, things slow down so much when we reach middle age, that things that we were able to brush under the rug, things that we were able to say it wasn't a big deal, they somehow seem to resurface. Because all of a sudden I'm looking at all these things, I'm like, why is this didn't bother me, this didn't affect me, but now here it is, right? So they tend to become what I like to call emotional roadblocks, and you kind of have to work through some things. I'm not saying they're major, catastrophic things, but let's just say we all have our doubts. We all have our insecurities. We all have our fears and the limiting beliefs. All of these things tend to hold us back. And I think for some people, like myself, we start to realize that. And again, it's overwhelming and it's scary, because who wants to do that? Who wants to deal with all that stuff? I didn't.
Yeah, no,
Nobody does.
Look at that stuff.
Right.
That's hard work. And I wonder if, because you were so involved in loving your role as a mom, you didn't really have to look at that. And it's only when you reached a point of crisis, of personal struggle, that then you were kind of forced to, and going to therapy, which I'm a big fan of myself, where you were kind of forced to look at some of this stuff that was contributing to
Right.
your sense of personal crisis and loss.
Right, right. And so I would just look at it and just be so overwhelmed because I didn't want to deal with it. And I'd go to bed every night and be like, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. I just want to wake up tomorrow and feel better. And tomorrow would come and I wouldn't feel better. And that was my cue. All right, time to face it. So, I just said, I'm going to embrace it. And I think I have 4 A's that I did. You have to acknowledge it. You have to accept it, allow it to be there, but then you have to address it. Because if you don't address it, it's never going to go away. And it's always going to be standing in your way. And some people can live their life like that. But I couldn't. I chose to, kind of dig down a little bit and work through some issues. And, once you start to do that, that's when you transform. That's when you're able to start to shed the layers, let go of what no longer serves. And it's almost like you emerge. It's like you become the best version of yourself possible. And so and then, like I said, towards the end, once I was starting to get to a healthier place emotionally and mentally, and I looked back and I was reflecting on everything, I saw to myself, there's a pattern here. Like there were these phases that I went through, it was like, first I had the life-changing event, and what happens is I call it an awakening because it's like the ground shifts underneath you and it's like shaking you and you're waking up like, what the heck is happening? My life is changing and I have no control over it. I'm so mad because I just remembered that there's a quote, I actually have it on my website, from Brené Brown. And I don't remember it verbatim, but it has something to do with like, midlife is when the universe is shaking you, saying, hey, get shit together and let's go, chop, chop. It's time to take advantage of all of these gifts that you have that you're not using.
It's a favorite quote of mine too. I love it. She's so right on that. And it's, and I think there's a sense of time speeding up, I feel like in midlife, I mean, you're halfway through, if you're lucky at 40 or 50, you're hoping to live another half, but certainly at least halfway through in your adult life. And you're kind of like, oh, and the other thing that happens, I don't know if this happened to you, but as I've seen with women, and I think some men, when your parents pass away, you then become sort of the elder in the family. And that has huge implications also, and a feeling of time speeding up and a new responsibility that, okay, like I need to do the best I can with the time that I've got left.
Yes. Fortunately, my parents are both still here, but
mine too, but I have enough women who, and I've worked with and talked to whose parents go, and it's a seismic shift for them.
Yeah. I mean, even just looking at them and watching them age, that in itself is a little bit of a wake up call. Like I remember when my mom was 50, like I'm not 50, my mom's 50, it's like this realization that time is no longer on our side.
And they seem so, I used to remember thinking that was so old.
I know.
I mean, I'm going to turn 60 in a few years. And I remember, oh my God, I mean, just a few years ago, I thought of 60 as being old. It's just so interesting how our perspective changes right now. I'm like 60 is not old. And then I'm sure when I'm 65, I'll be like 70 is not old. I don't know when you get to be old. I'm extending my midlife as long as possible.
Why not? Why not? But yeah, so, I mean, my hope is that I can help women see this as a positive thing and not as something negative, not as something that they should be ashamed of, because, midlife crisis is just, there's so much negativity around it. So if you can kind of spin it and put a different perspective on it and look at it as something that maybe it might not be, it's not going to be 100% great as far as the experience is concerned, but if you could just ride it out, then in the end, it's going to be worth it. Because you're just going to, I mean, like I could say right now, I feel I'm probably the best I've ever been in my life.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean that sincerely. I'm in such a good place. I feel emotionally and mentally healthy and strong. I have good days and bad days, just like everybody else. I wake up sometimes and I feel like crap, but you can't be happy 110% of the time. So yeah, I mean, that's just my hope, is that more women will be more forthcoming with the struggles that they might be having. And I did say it earlier that I know not every woman struggles, but I do believe that there are women out there who are struggling and I think might be a little a little apprehensive to express that.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So for you, it sounds like you really dug deep and you were willing to do the work to look at what is behind this sort of life crisis I'm feeling. And it was a combination of, was it mostly the therapy, or were there other things that you did to get to that other side?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually, because I believe, as much as I'm all about therapy. I really am. I've been in therapy many times. But for some reason, this time around, I felt like it brought me to a certain place of, I guess I'll say, acknowledgement.
Okay.
But then I kind of realized I needed to do something else, and I wasn't sure what that was. So that's when I just started diving in and reading books and searching on websites and stuff like that. And then I did finally join Facebook, and I found a lot of groups that were supportive, which was very helpful to me. And I thought to myself, God, why didn't I do this before? But it just never dawned on me. It just never did. But so one thing I started to do was meditate, and that definitely helped me tremendously. One thing I can say, meditation helped me become much more mindful.
Mm-hmm.
And when you become more mindful, you also become more grateful, because you're present and you're aware when you're mindful. So then you're able to kind of see things differently, and you're like, wow, I'm really fortunate. I'm really lucky. And I can even say that for when I was really struggling and in that low point, I could still look back on that and think that I was pretty lucky, because I did have love and support around me. I really wasn't, although I might have felt alone, I really wasn't. So it could have been worse, but I try to see the positive in things. But yeah, so I meditated, and I also started journaling again, because I used to journal, but I started journaling again. And that was a big part of it for me. And then just self-care. Just like I say all the time in a lot of the groups that I'm in now, even though I may not need the support, I'm there because I want to offer the support, because I know how much I wanted it. And one of the things that I tell women all the time, because, anytime we feel something bad, immediately we just want to push it away. It's like, no, I don't want to feel that. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. And you just want to push it away. But if you just allow yourself to feel sad and be okay with that, if that's your way of releasing it. If you're going to hold on to that, you're never going to feel better. But if you can just allow yourself and say, it's okay, I'm sad. My son, my daughter, my child is away at college, and, my 2 kids are away at college, and now I'm in an empty nest. And yeah, I feel sad. I feel lonely. Why is that so shunned? I don't,
Right.
I don't know why we're not allowed to feel bad. We're not allowed to have a bad couple of days. So that was something too, that I just allowed myself to feel. And that really helped me get through a lot of it.
Yeah, it sounds like really being present. I mean, the reading, the meditation, the seeking to understand, the self-care, and it also, I'm imagining connecting with other women in those groups. I mean, as much as social media gets a bad rap, there's room for it, and there's room for find very interesting connections and resources online. So I think, I'm sure you joined some groups, and it just, that all helped. And I asked on the comments, so how women themselves got to the other side. And Val says, I got selfish and put me above all else. She says, we lost my beloved father-in-law 6 months after the youngest went to college. And that year of grieving taught me I can't live the rest of my life sad. So it sounds like Val saying she took the time, allowed herself to do the grieving, and was able to come out on the other side. That's
right.
Really awesome. That's a lot to go through with
Mm-hmm.
An elderly family member at the same time as your last one goes to school, leaves the nest. So but the idea of being selfish, and she writes it in quotes, which, I know what she means. It's like, that's also, after so much time of us putting ourselves last, I feel like certainly as mothers, it's always everybody else is the priority in the house. This is a time to really focus on yourself and be a little selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like you were able to do that?
It wasn't easy, because something else that I realized too was I went through this phase where I just started questioning things. you know. I guess this is part of my awakening part, where like the spiritual part comes to play, because I also started to become very involved with trusting the universe and manifesting, setting intentions, personal affirmations. Like all of those things came into play organically. It wasn't like I sought them out, but I started to read about them, and I said, well, why not try it? You know, I mean, I could apply it to my life, and it definitely helped me as well. But I think one of the things that was really hard was that I realized that I had toxic people around me.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had to walk away from certain relationships and friendships.
Yeah.
And that was hard, you know, because it's not that I didn't care about those people or love them, but it wasn't a healthy relationship. So I had to let it go. And that was definitely hard. So, you know, you grieve that as well. You know, that's also part of the grieving, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, you have to do it because that's part of being selfish. That's part of that self-care, where I have to walk away from you because you're not healthy for me,
Yeah.
you know. So that was something else that did come into play for me. But yeah, I mean, the self-care, I mean, now I'm all about self-care, you know, like I love it. I give myself my baths and I go out in nature, and self-care is different for everybody, you know, whatever it is that makes you feel good, that you do for yourself, and that's what you need to do. You know, you need to make sure you take time out to do that.
So it sounds like quite a transformation. I mean, and I'm curious to know how your family, your parents, husband, kids, friends, best friends responded to the shifts they saw in you. You know, it may have been pretty gradual, so maybe it didn't, you know, it was an acclimatation over time, but I'm curious to know, you know, first when you kind of went low, you know, were people kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, Doreen's not, you know, mom's doing, or, you know, my wife or whatever. And then when you did all the self-work and you were able to get selfish, was that hard on the people around you? Like, you know, when is she going to start cooking us dinner again or whatever? and you know, whatever that meant for you. And then coming to the other side, like, how is that for the people around you? Because I can imagine it can be hard for those around you when you're going through your struggle and then coming out on the other end and kind of being a different person.
Yeah. You know, it definitely put a strain on my marriage. You know, I think I give my husband a lot of credit for putting up with me. And as far as the kids were concerned, it wasn't really something that I shared with them because I didn't really feel that I needed to. But there are times where, you know, mom has a headache, you know, so mom's laying down at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, coming in the room. What's like, you okay, mom? Yeah, I just have a headache, you know, as I'm crying, you know, or something.
Right.
But they were also older, so it wasn't like they really needed me. So that was a plus. Right. I didn't really share it with too many people. I'm pretty good at wearing the mask, if you will. Yeah. So, but I do have, you know, 2 very, very close friends that watched me go through it, and my sister, and I know that now they say that they're like, you're probably in the best place that you've ever been, you know, so they did see the transformation. But then at the same time, you know, you don't want to be Debbie Downer every time you talk to people, every time you go out, you know, you want that break because you feel like crap all the time. It's like, all right, I just want to go out and have fun, you know, and just try to enjoy myself. You don't want to be there like, ooh, you know, crying all the time on everybody's shoulder, because nobody likes that either. But it really was something that I feel like I went through by myself, because, you know, if you don't understand what somebody's really going through, it's hard to understand it, I guess, you know, like, if not even that, if you've never experienced it, that's basically what I'm saying. Like, if you've never experienced what someone's going through, you know, you could be sympathetic, but the empathy is lacking because you just don't understand it, you know. So but yeah, I mean, definitely. And my husband, of course, you know, our relationship is much healthier now.
Yeah.
So, you know, and as a matter of fact, he, you know, it happens to men too, because he happened to go through a rough period too. When my second son, which I thought was interesting, because when my first son went to college, I was the one who fell apart. And I thought, oh gosh, here we go again. You know, my second son's going to college. But I think I already got it out of my system. Right. You know, so maybe it was a good thing that we both had to take turns. You know? Yeah. I lost it the first time around and he lost it the second time around. So we were able to sort of support one another. But yeah, I mean, you know, men do experience it too, but he certainly didn't go through what I went through.
Right. Exactly.
You know? So, but yeah, I mean, overall things are definitely in a much better place for me with my relationships with my kids and my husband and my friends. And so,
Yeah, it really does sound like you've come out on the other end sort of stronger, more confident, more secure in who you are, and just, ready to tackle the world. And tell us a little bit about your coaching and how you work with women.
well, because like I said, didn't find the support that I needed, and I had this experience, and I kept thinking to myself, there's no way I'm the only person who's gone through this. Once I got into the Facebook groups, it was like validating. It was validation for me that I knew it. I was like, I knew it. I knew I'm not the only one, because I was reading all of these comments that these women were writing. And that's when I said to myself, you know what? There are women out there who need support. And one of the big things I think we need most when we're in that place is compassion. Because you don't really get a lot of compassion. I don't think women get a lot of compassion in general, but when it comes to this, and I just said to myself, I want to be there for these women. I want to be able to say, hey, it's okay. I can help you get through this. And I guess you could say my slogan is discover, embrace, transform, because it was part of what I said before, like you go through these phases, and the one phase is like the discovery phase, like wow, I have these limiting beliefs, I have these obstacles and these emotional blockages, and then you embrace it. And I think that's where really the transformation begins, because once you embrace it, then you accept it. Like I said, acknowledge, accept, allow, address, and then you work through it. And that's when you're able to say, I'm going to let go of this. It's not serving me any purpose anymore. I don't need to be carrying it around with me. And so, that's where I got. So the program is Midlife Awakening. That's the program that I offer for women. It's a 3-month program. And we kind of go through the 3 phases, like the first phase, the first month, you kind of go through the discovery phase. And it's not cookie cutter, because everybody's different, obviously.
It's one-on-one.
It's one-on-one. It's one-on-one at this point. So it's not cookie cutter. I create it so that it's going to meet the individual need of my client, because everybody's different, and everybody's crisis, life-changing event is different. So, but I take them through that process. So by the end, they're making that transformation, but they leave with the tools and the resources and the skills that they need to understand it and be able to process it as they go further. So
that sounds amazing. And what a way to put your struggle, your experience to work to help other women who undoubtedly, as I also well know, go through maybe not the same, again, very individual, but their own struggle in midlife oftentimes. And it sounds particularly for women, in your experience, it was, empty nest, but like you said, it could be a number of catalysts that could lead to that kind of midlife crisis that turns into an awakening. So it sounds like you guide them through. And you also have a gift for our viewers today. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I created a the Midlife Personal Development Workbook. And I came up with this idea because there's 5 areas of personal development that I believe are the foundation. Like, personal development is something that we should continue doing throughout our lives. It's not like this one-time thing, because it improves so many areas of our lives, relationships, work, just your overall happiness within yourself. So the 5 areas that I focus on in this workbook are mindfulness, gratitude, self-love and self-care, self-respect, self-confidence, and spirituality. So the reason I did that was because I feel like if you could really get a solid foundation on those 5 areas, then you can start to gradually make those positive changes in your life that you want to make. It's almost like support, so the workbook is, it's like a little bit of a questionnaire. And then, like the circle, I don't know, what do they call this though? The wheel of life, right? And then you have all the pies. So I created that wheel of life based on the personal development categories. So you're able to say, okay, based on those questions, which area do I really need to work on the most? Or which area do I want to improve upon? And so there's like a worksheet or 2 that you could set goals for yourself, and you kind of learn like what I need to work on and what I can let go of, what I need to stay focused on. And then and then there's some suggestions in each area where you can make those improvements.
That sounds amazing.
So.
And thank you for your generous gift. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put the link to Doreen's gift and to her website in the comments. So please check those out.
I also just started my own Facebook group.
Yay! What's it
Yeah.
called?
The Soulful Moms Empty Nest Community.
Okay, check that out. Let's put the link in the comments too. If I don't do it, you go ahead and add the link to the comments on the live in Facebook, will you?
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
Definitely.
So I want to thank you so much for being here with us, Doreen. I really appreciate your time and your insights and your sharing of yourself and your journey. I hope everybody enjoys. Thank you, Val, for being here live with us. And
thank you.
Yeah, and hope everybody will who's listening will write comments, and Doreen will be in there to respond to them. So don't forget to check out all the links I'm going to add to the comments. And if you enjoy these videos, certainly please watch for more. We're back and coming weekly. So until then, be well and stay safe, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.